Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get started now. Um, we are being recorded. Recording is in process. I believe you should have heard that when you came on. Welcome and thank you all for joining us tonight. My name's Anna Wolovic, and I'm the co-founder and director of Blackball Projects, a 501c3 nonprofit arts organization created by artists, for artists, and run by artists. Our mission is to serve and support contemporary artists who are underexposed and who have been working diligently on the periphery of the greater art world. Diversity of all kinds, be it gender, racial, age, or economic, is at the core of our mission. Just a little bit about Blackball. From 2015 to 2020, we produced 28 physical exhibitions in our small gallery space on the south side of Williamsburg in Brooklyn. The New York Times Spring Gallery Guide named Blackball Project as a gallery to watch in both 2017 and 2018. And our exhibitions were reviewed by the New Yorker, the Village Voice, and the Brooklyn Rail, amongst others. We've also been selected as editors' picks and picks of the week many times. Thanks to the pandemic, we lost our physical space and pivoted to an online platform where we have created 9 online viewing rooms and related artist talks, 4 microgrant cycles, with our fifth cycle in process now, and over the years have supported hundreds of artists. We also have a web shop where you, the public, can purchase books, catalogs, and artworks, see our website, and join our mailing list if you haven't already. In 2021, we launched our microgrant program that supports artists who have a mature contemporary art practice, but are still, or again, underexposed. Please have a look at our website for more information. The microgrant is currently by nomination only. We are here tonight for an artist talk with our wonderful 2024 microgrant recipient, Jazmine Catasús. And we are thrilled to have independent curator and artist Christina Massey here with us to be in conversation with Jazmine. Just a bit of housekeeping. Christina will be shortly introducing Jazmine, who will then walk us through a presentation of her work. Please add any questions you have to the chat, and we'll open up for audience questions for the final part of the talk. This talk is being recorded and will appear on Jazmine's viewing room on our website, along with a PDF of Jazmine's work that will be available for download. And now, without further ado, I am honored to introduce Christina Massey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for
But
being here.
let me introduce you properly.
Oh,
Christina Massey is a mixed media artist whose work spans sculpture, painting, and installation. Massey's work has won several awards, including a Paula Krasner Foundation grant, and is currently an artist in residence at Art Cake in Brooklyn. In recent years, she was awarded her second Brooklyn Arts Fund grant, a residency on Governor's Island, an FST Studio Project Fund grant, an SIP fellowship at the EFA Robert Blackburn Printmaking Workshop, and a Puffin Foundation grant. Additionally, Massey has over a decade of curatorial experience. In 2016, she founded WoArt, a platform dedicated to promoting and showcasing the work of female identifying artists through social media and curated exhibitions. Her curatorial projects have been displayed in venues such as the Hunterdon Art Museum, C24 Gallery, Court Tree Collective, Space 776, Biobat Art Space, ISE Foundation, and Cluster Gallery, amongst others. And her projects have been featured in notable publications including ArtNet News, Visionary Project, and ABC News. Thank you so much for joining us, Christina, and I am delighted to pass the mic to you. Take it away, Christina.
thank you. I am just so excited to be here tonight with Jazmine and introduce you and get to see your most recent works and everything. So I'm going to introduce Jazmine and we can get to the fun stuff and see your work. So Jazmine Catasús is an artist and educator, primarily working with print and paper making. Her practice is concerned with the intersections of ornamentation, materiality, spiritual practices, and Black subjectivity. She holds an MFA from the School of Art Institute of Chicago, where she was the recipient of the New Artist Award. As an educator, Jazmine has taught printmaking and papermaking workshops at several institutions, including Dieudonné, the Center for Contemporary Printmaking in the International Print Center of New York, Museum of Modern Art, and the Gucci Museum. Sorry, I'm skipping my words here. Let me take a sip of water. Her work has been exhibited nationally, most recently at the National Arts Club, New York City. She's the artistic director and master printer at EFA Robert Blackburn Printmaking Workshop. Jazmine has attended residencies at the Bard Graduate Center, the Penland School of Crafts, and the Morgan Conservatory, and is currently visiting professor at Pratt Institute, which is all incredibly exciting to hear about. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to you so we can get to know your work and your process better, and then we'll start into a little conversation and Q&A from the audience.
Awesome. Thank you. First, thank you, Blackwell Project. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Shabbat, for awarding me this grant and all the work that you've done so far. The viewing room is amazing. Looks great. And Christina, thank you so much for nominating me. And I'm really excited to share my work with all of you tonight. Thanks for joining. So I'm just going to share my screen and talk through some past pieces and where I'm currently working now. And we'll go from there. Okay. Okay. How are we looking?
Perfect.
Great. Great. Okay, Jazmine Catasús.
Can everybody see everything? All good? Yeah, okay.
Not my crazy looking notes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I am an object-based artist, meaning I make things. So my practice, saying that this microgrant for works, it's called Works on Paper, but the core material of my practice is paper making. So everything that I work with and through has handmade paper in it. So I figure I'll start with these pieces because this is kind of the crux and the core and interest of my practice. And this is the beginning of a series I call Patois Relics. I'm really, in my practice, I'm interested in the intersections of Black subjectivity, Blackness, and religio-aesthetics in spiritualities. So when I say religio-aesthetics, I'm really interested in the objects that are developed and created, the architecture that envelops religion. I mostly draw from my own culture and background. So I'm researching a lot of Caribbean religious practices, and also other practices within the Black diaspora. And I'm particularly obsessed with and interested in Catholicism. I'm not Catholic, nor been raised Catholic, but I've grown up in Catholic schools, and I'm realizing more and more as I work through this practice how much of that has influenced the way I think about making and just what I'm interested in working through. So this project, Patois Relics, materializes in these sculptures the concepts, it brings together concepts of these ideas I'm working through. Black subjectivity, particularly Black feminine subjectivity, and spiritual practices. So if you're not familiar with what I'm using here, I'm elevating door knocker earrings, or sometimes referred to as family earrings, and these are really common jewelry adornments in Black and Latino women culture that was made popular by Black women in the 90s hip hop scene, and they're just like iconic. So this series and the subsequent research around this is how do everyday objects oscillate between the sacred and the profane? How does everyday materials that we use to embellish, enshroud, can be imbued with sacred significance? And with these, I'm thinking about ornament, the decorative, and how we utilize it in various cultures, practices to build knowledge systems, and how we manipulate matter to enhance political power, to affirm identity, or to connect with the cosmos. So I began thinking about ornament and adornment as a material strategy. So what happens when we take off the earring from the body and put it on the wall? What happens when we reduce the things we use to decorate or adorn to just material to build something else? So here's so here's just the door knockers as they are, and you can see on these other images, I'm like really like breaking it apart to remove it from this kind of a on the body worn ornament, and think of it as a symbol or a glyph or whatnot. And then the project expanded. Oh, actually, yeah. So before I get to where the project expanded, you see that each piece was wrapped. And I am wrapping, so I'm recomposing these door knockers into, small compositions on these placards and wrapping it in a handmade paper. This is a fiber called Africa that is transparent and see-through. And in the act of wrapping the door knockers, I am citing the Catholic ritual. Well, maybe not only Catholic, it can actually be through other spiritual practices of consecration, right? What are the rituals that we do around objects to bring into the sacred spaces? And through my research, I was thinking about relics as these everyday objects, right? You go into, I was in an old cathedral in Spain and seeing an arm, but what was more interesting was the box that was in. So as I was reading and thinking about relics, so not the mundane object, it's not the relic that's really exciting or important, but rather the object that is held, that holds it, the reliquary, what's around it. And that's what points to the importance and the sacredness of this object. And my interest in reading about reliquaries, what makes it reliquary is the decorative aspect of it, is the ornament aspect of it. So it's much more than just simply a surface visual experience. It is to point to something greater, and that's how everyday objects do oscillate between the sacred and mundane. And so and through this research, I found that through my research, I was learning about how and why what, as I understand, and what most people understand as Catholic aesthetics, right? The opulence came from what the Baroque style of Catholicism was an intentional choice made by the Catholic Church in the 1500s. in the Council of Trent, where hundreds of priests came together and in an effort to maintain parishioners against the growing Protestant Reformation, decided that this is how the church or Catholicism will look, this opulence, this architecture. And it's also in this council where they made a decree on relics, which I thought was just like fascinating. So here we have within the spiritual practice or political practice, political actually for these reasons, and objects and with objects. So that's where this project had come to. So this is an installation of the series which was installed at my residency at Bard Graduate Center. And here's another close up. And through my research, I found I understood ornamentation and the decorative to be a tool, like a propaganda tool. But it's also a tool to affirm identity. And I see that in the earrings as a Black woman from New York, where most of us at some point had a pair of these hoops. It's like a rite of passage. You get a pair of your kid. And to bring those things into conversation is what I was thinking through these projects. What is it to elevate and to affirm identity in a sacred way as a Black woman? And then I start to see, and the more I thought about it, I start to see these kind of overlaps, just like in my everyday life. So I'm like, oh, look at this like velvet, red velvet that you see in altars in Catholic churches. And then this like the way that these door knockers are presented, either, at the like we buy gold stores or jewelry stores or just like vendors on the street. And what I love about these as well, these earrings, is that there's no, as far as I know, if anyone out there can tell me, there's no direct origin story for them, like no designer or design house for them. Like the best that researchers could come up with or understand that they were made, like they were cheaply made in China from like Asian markets and sold in inexpensive or like low income neighborhoods, and they just took off. So I love that the fact that there is no like origin story. It's just these earrings have taken on a life and a narrative themselves. So I'm not only with the earrings am I interested in, but then I started taking on other forms of those religio-aesthetics, like particularly like the velvet and the gold with the earrings. And I've started to, you can see here, those white parts, those white strips are the structure of the door knockers that I had expanded and broke apart. So now I'm starting to see them now as like glyphs, glyphs, language, almost like paint strokes now. So they've become a really, as I continue to work through this and think through this iconic material, what are ways that I can continue to express the ideas of ornament as a way of building knowledge or expressing identity that's not, recognized as like a piece of jewelry per se. And just and then I'm considering the sensuousness of it all. For me, the golds and the velvets, the materiality of it is really important, and invoking those kind of like sacredness and giving importance to to these objects. So where am I here? Oh, okay. So I here's an image of the door knocker that I've expanded and cast in paper. So these are all handmade paper pieces. Mostly over here, there's some lace, which I will talk about in the next piece. And this is starting to go into my current work and current practice. Again, thinking of ornaments, so a few process shots. And outside of the earrings, I'm just thinking of what are other ways that we embellish. So like glittery, sparkly material, I think in their own right stands has enough weight to I guess just continue to evoke these ideas of affirmation and yeah. So this is my newest. So this is the turn my work is taking now. And I call this series, beginning of this series, A Will to Adorn. And that is from a quote from a Zora Neale Hurston essay, who is, I'm learning more and more, is quite influential in my practice as well as Zora Neale Hurston. But in this essay called The Characteristics of Native Expression, she writes, the will to adorn is the second most notable characteristic in Native expression. Perhaps this idea of ornament does not attempt to meet conventional standards, but it satisfies the soul of the creator. So again, I'm like thinking of how these objects and how just the decorative in itself is a way to affirm identity and celebrate oneself and one's culture, one's history. And in here, so again, I am using the door knocker earring as like a material strategy to build these sculptures, but I'm also in this way, in these areas, I have cast lace. And these lace pieces are really important to me in my practice, because I actually have a piece of it right here. And so I purchased this at a fabric store in the garment district ages ago. I mean, like, it had to be a decade ago. And I've just obsessed with it. It was just so beautiful. And I started making prints with it. I've used it as stencils. And I shelved it for a while, and I just couldn't, because I felt that I couldn't conceptually validate my use of this, besides the fact that it's pretty. So during my residency at Bard Library, which is an amazing place, they're focused in material studies, I found a book on Nigerian lace, and I was like, ah, that's what it is. Like, this is what this particular type of lace is and it's about. So what's so interesting about it is that it became really popular in Nigeria in the 60s, when Nigeria received independence from England, and has become a huge part of their fashion, a huge part of like royalty, a part of it, but it's not like its origin story, I guess, isn't in Nigeria. It's kind of a post-colonial material that developed in a similar way that Dutch wax prints are post-colonial, like introduced to Africa by way of Europe through colonialism, but has become very much part of West African culture. And this book had just like all these like really amazing like lace pieces, and it was really awesome. So I kind of dug it back up, and I was like, this is um totally what I'm thinking about and understanding as this decorative, ornamented textile that is really affirming identity and independence from colonial power, a new a new way of being, but just like again, I guess I said like an affirmation of identity and pride and independence. And I just was like, so, and I have these like, and so I actually recently tried to go back to the garments to sort of buy more, because in order to make my sculpture from this, I have to kind of ruin it a bit. But they're out.
The process of using it ruins the lace a little.
Yeah, because I have to make it cast and mold and stuff. So like, so and it's because we're artists, and we tend to hoard a bit. So every time I'm going through a box of things, I'll find a piece, and it's so precious to me, but I need to make more work. So I don't know. I'm in this place. So that's partially how I built this sculpture, and through it there's like this glittery black pressed thing. I think it's called Black Magnum. I believe it's like black glass. Um,
Do you
so
mind
I
if I
just
ask you how big this one is?
it is
Approximate is
53,
okay. Yeah.
53 inches wide,
Oh, wow.
and maybe like 20-ish high.
Okay.
So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
that's a good size.
fairly large. Um, and I also added bits of gold here, and then this piece. So let's see if I get another. Yes. And here's a close up. And this again, it's all paper, all paper foam. I mean, there's a few elements like these are acrylic sheets, and we have this gold chain, but again, all on paper. Um, so where was I? Yes. That's okay, right. So here's the part of this process is that it's kind of influenced by my I think printmaking background, and just making these small casts. So I make each one of these individually, and I probably have about 6 molds total. Making these and then recomposing them into these pieces. And again, so here's the lace. And I'm considering these edges when I'm adorning these sculptures, so to speak. So and this one is probably a little smaller. About 50 tall, like 40 tall, a little small, 40 tall and 50 wide. And yeah, all of these pieces are from the earring, but I'm seeing them as brush strokes at this point. So sometimes I refer to them as sculptures or relief sculptures, but they do feel like paintings at the same time. Um,
I
and
agree.
they're quite time consuming, so I have to give a shout out to these my interns and assistants who have helped me.
It's funny that you're calling them paintings because I always have this sort of back of my head little thing of like a drawing is something that's done quick and a painting takes longer, just like as a quick
Oh,
thing,
that's interesting.
which makes no sense and has no like real value to it in a statement, but like it feels more uh so much
Interrelating.
more effort has been put into the creation of
They're
these.
consuming. Yeah, yeah. I'm also thinking, as I think through adornment or thinking through um, Black feminine subjectivity, I'm thinking about these earrings too, that so many, I mean, they might be, common parts now, but there were, Black women who wore them referred to as ghetto, right? And over the top. And so it makes me think of Sadie Hartman and like her writing about like, you know, dressing loudly and feminine and Black, her research and um, Black women of like lower socioeconomic background, um, as a radical act of self-determination as well. So I think these are like and and self-preservation. So these works for me also subvert patriarchal ideologies, Eurocentric ideologies and narratives that are associated with ornament, right? Like we're thinking about like Alda Flus and like criminal ornament, criminal ornamentation. I confuse it with oh man, it's deceiving me now. And really famous artist whose work is in African Dutch wax prints.
Oh, from London, right?
Yes, he's English, but he wrote a beautiful essay and curated a show called Criminal Ornamentation, in reference to this to Alder Flus's essay. Anyways, but ornament is often associated with um, the feminine or non-European the criminal. So I think a lot about Sadia Hartman's writing as well in this project. How are we doing on time? Okay, and let's see. And these are the most recent iterations of that. So these are much smaller, and in these pieces, I'm kind of mixing both techniques. So the cast pieces, but also wrapping. It's hard to see in these images, but these are wrapped as well. So these are those lace pieces that are wrapped and embellished with gold, because gold, right? Um,
You're using gold leaf or are you using like a gold paint?
I'm using gold paint,
Yeah.
and gold pigment, like powdered pigment, and making my own
Oh, yeah,
paint.
yeah.
Shout out to Gara Pigments. In these as well. So in this piece, actually, you can probably see it best here, the part that's partially wrapped and partially cast paper. And again, all cast paper, and I'm using and recomposing these elements to create these relief sculptures. I think a lot about music. I see them as like music notes, and they're like different compositions. These works. and same with this piece as well. And we have time. I'll just show them. They're just and because I thought I'd also throw in a couple of paintings, or I'm calling them paintings. So I don't care what
You're
everyone else
allowed to
calls
call them
them.
paint.
Um, again, on paper, and with these, I'm working with paper pulp on sheer fabric, and working with works behind the sheer fabric as well. So they're kind of newer works when we're working on abstract and modesties. And all of these small pieces, again, are parts of those like decorative ornamented sculptures I'm using. Yeah. One more, I think I have one more.
Are those on stretcher
Okay.
bars? And then the
Yes.
paper is stretched, not stretched over, but not how you would stretch canvas, but in a much more delicate
No, it
fashion.
is. So this is actually fabric.
Ah,
This is
okay.
actually, yeah, sheer fabric that I use because when I started doing these paintings, I was doing them on canvas, and I just really wanted the because paper is my they have developed this relationship with this material that I don't use it in a way where it's like traditional, like holding sheets
Yeah.
of paper,
Yeah.
sheets of paper. And I really just wanted to like focus or draw more attention to the materiality of it. So I thought, oh, if I just did something that was kind of see-through, so the texture and the haptic experience of this material that I'm obsessed with and drives me can be enhanced. So I started doing
Okay.
these see-through paintings. And then I said, oh, well, they're see-through. What if I put something behind them?
Actually, that leads me to a good question. Because I remember visiting your studio this is years ago. I think it was 2018 or 19
Wow.
or something, and you were working on the small little relic pieces that you'd had to start. And um, I remember you telling me about the process and technique, and it's forever cemented in my brain, you and paper, because you were so passionate about paper. So I just wondered if you could expand a little bit on that, like what brought you to paper and your love of paper
Yeah.
in the process.
Um, I was introduced to handmade paper like as a printmaking student at Hunter undergrad. And my professor did like a rudimentary like blender thing, and I was like, oh, wait, like, excuse me, you can make your own paper. And it makes sense that printmakers are so interested in paper because we're printing mostly on paper, and it's really important to whatever technique and print you're working working through, the type of paper, fiber, excellency. So then I started interning at Dieudonné, which is a nonprofit organization here in New York that is dedicated to the art of handmade paper, and contemporary practices surrounding it. And I just like never left. And as so I haven't made a print for myself in a very long time. And I found that at some point in my practice, I wanted to work in a more improvised fashion. And if anyone has made a print before, you know that it's very process heavy. So I started painting again, but I just didn't have that relationship with paint the way that a painter would. That's something you develop, right? You take time with. But I did have this relationship with this paper pulp, and I said, why not? Who said I can't paint with paper pulp? And create sculptures with it. So yeah, that's what I do. That's my thing. I need
It's really
paper pulp.
incredible what you're able to do with paper. I mean, some of those pieces, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that it's paper. It's really incredible what you're able to create with not even just the difference of the surfaces in the textures, but some of them, you really have highlighted the shine and the mattness of different surfaces in this incredibly beautiful surface way that it's so interesting to hear, that whole background of the ornamentation and how that plays into how we're seeing those surfaces. But yeah, I know I'd asked on Instagram what people wanted to hear, and that people were definitely interested about the processes. So I know you had a photo of the molds. I wonder if you could just kind of even explain a little bit
Okay.
how that works for those that are interested.
Okay. So so this process of paper, this is called casting cotton. It's really similar to clay. I mean, in the way that use it in the studio. So in order to make them, I have to make a mold. So I guess I make a silicone rubber mold. And that's why it kind of ruins this thing because it's impossible to get the silicone off of it. And I don't know how technical you need me to get, but it's actually one of the fastest forms of like handmade paper you can make because it's like you want it to be fairly chunky, um, so to speak. And you just kind of shove it in a mold. It's the same way you would with clay and let it
Right.
dry and then pop them out of the silicone molds. Um, the abaca though that is used for wrapping. So yeah, so what I did with the door knockers is I um 3D scanned it and made a larger 3D model so that it's about this big and cast that piece. Um, but all of these are just the same like cast
When you talk about
parts.
casting it, for those of us who are not sculptors or familiar with casting processes, are you actually taking the paper pulp and putting that into the mold and then having that dry? Like,
Yes.
is there some sort of a binder in the pulp, or it's just the the interweaving fabric, the strands?
Yeah, the fibers
Yeah.
of the when so when you make a sheet, so if you're pulling a sheet of paper, you make a sheet of paper, or if you're packing to the molds, what happens is that the fibers, when it's pressed and the water comes out, because you need a lot of water for paper making, and you're pressing the paper, the fibers are interlocking and bonding, so hydrogen bonding. And that's how you make a sheet of paper, essentially. So you could, if you're pulling flat sheets, you put in a hydraulic press, it crushes it and binds it. But with the molds, it's all by hand. So I'm just pressing it with a sponge, which is drawing out the excess water and um, compacting the fibers.
It's one of those processes and techniques that I think it's easiest to do in a workshop, right? Like, because you need to kind of see and
Yeah.
feel all those things, which you obviously are an excellent teacher on top of your experience as an artist. And I know we're trying to wrap at 8, so I'm going to tie us back into kind of that
We're gonna go over a
a
little,
little bit.
so yeah,
Okay,
so we can don't we get started a little late.
that's our, okay,
So
perfect.
Yeah, take your time, make sure, you get your questions in and the folks get their questions in.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so I just wanted to maybe let's pivot a little bit to kind of career wise. So we're part of this, award and talk is about kind of recognizing you and your work and the path that you've gone on. So I wondered if you could tell us maybe a pivotal moment in your career, whether that was a particular project
Uh-oh.
or an opportunity. And how did that come about? Or on the flip side, it could be even if there was a challenge that was difficult for you and how you've overcome that challenge.
But, so I feel like this pivot in my practice with this piece may be um, an example of like what comes out of challenges, life challenges. Uh, so this kind of came together in a moment that I needed it to, and I made this for my like right before my MFA thesis show. So I finished my MFA. Um, Shout out to SAC low res 2 summers ago, and so I started. So I'm a working artist, so I have a full-time job, and I also have a child, and not much studio space. So these were just like, I just you have to make something every day, right? So it was like I made all these pieces like over months, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like passing these pieces because I just loved the lace casts. I just loved, the earring. It was just so much part of my practice, and I was making this over and over, and I'm like, what's happening here? Um, and then there was a moment where I just all of a sudden had all this material, and I'm like, what to do with all this material? And that's when this project really started coming together for me. Um, so I feel like as a working artist, mother, that's like a huge challenge for me to make work. Also, lack of space in New York City, studio space, um,
Yes.
and I just continued making these small things that didn't make sense at first, but it's kind of like sketching every day. I don't really draw. I don't have like a drawing practice, but this is something that I did all the time and have boxes and boxes of. And that's how I got out that bit of creative energy to kind of keep me going. And it's like this piece just needed to exist. Like it told me that it needed to exist without
Yeah.
me having that intention first.
I love that. I mean, that's so relatable for so many, like the lack of space, and really taking that challenge of life, having a child and no space and just needing to create. And it's like, okay, well, it might be small, but it could be something later. They're really incredible pieces, and I love how you brought that all together.
And it just came together. And then I was like, oh, this is like also a culmination of all the things that I'm researching and reading and feeling, and I could like vocalize it like what I was working with. Yeah, so it's an ongoing, these are the newest works. Okay, I did this last
Is
year.
that blue
And
symbolic for you? I know the red is symbolic. Is the blue have a certain significance for you?
um, you know, I've been in a blue, so as you can probably tell, like I hate color. Work monochromatically. Um, Specifically blue. Um, and this is like another, besides being just attracted to it and thinking of blues, um, like blues as like a African American art form. But also I read this wonderful book called Sensuous Knowledge by this writer, Mina Salami. And it's about how in Western Eurocentric society, we have put less importance on the sensual, and which is feminine. Um, and she's Nigerian and like Dutch or something. So she's like talking about like growing up and in between these two worlds and these areas of thought. But then she writes, there's a uh, um, like half or a quarter of a chapter where she writes about blue as a feminine color in Nigeria. And I was just like so struck by it. So I think about it all the time. So one of the few colors that I do use in my work is,
Yeah, it's just these little hints.
yeah.
And it's always that real beautiful bright blue.
And
Is it a natural pigment that you're using?
Is
Definitely
it, is
feel
it
blue.
ultramarine? Is it
It's like an
ultramarine?
ultramarine blue, but this is actually, and I don't know if I have a close up of it. If you can see it, it's like a crushed quartz that I pigmented. So the quartz is blue. The quartz is more like this blue alone,
Okay,
and then
got
I
it. Yeah.
pigmented it to be a more intense blue in these little areas. That's
A little dab of color.
yeah, that's all you need.
That's all you need. I actually want to ask you, I see some people in the chat mentioning some other, it's further back in the chat, I lost it now, but they were noticing some influences in your work. And I know that you've had the opportunity to work with some pretty amazing artists through work. Do you have a good, story that you can share with us or a moment of inspiration or anything?
It's funny. I mean, I've worked with a lot of really amazing artists at the print shop, collaborating, printing with them, for them. Um, and it's great that I get to build a project with an artist. I mean, artists, we're so siloed in our own practices, so it's nice to kind of collaborate on an addition. Let me see. I can say that although I haven't made a print for myself, I have all these ideas of what I would like to do in print, and I get to test those ideas with the artists that I work with. So like for example, I did an edition with Camila, the artist Camila Janan Rashid, and who's really interested in like chemical processes, working with like I suppose photo paper. I'll get a little technical. So, so we did a photolithography project, and it's a aluminum plate with a photosensitive material, and you expose an image on it. But I always wondered what would happen if you just like removed the emulsion without an image, just abstractly kind of like painting. And she was really into it. And I was like, sweet. And we made some really great prints together. But there's also just like great I did an edition with Dina McCannon, who is just like a powerhouse, um, awesome artist. Um, and she's in her 80s, so she's also like a wealth of knowledge and advice. And I just admired working with her. Um, she brought me a plate from the 70s that she made. So it's
Oh,
really
wow.
important, like that she never had printed by a master printer before. So I guess moments like that, I'm not sure if any influences my work. It definitely gives me an opportunity to experiment on things that I want to experiment with.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Okay, sorry. I see a question in the chat here. Someone's asking about fragility in your work, in both concept and the physicality of it.
Handmade paper is really strong. I would say they're less fragile than like ceramic. Um, but fragility conceptually is not something I do think about. Um,
Well, it's interesting to because we think of paper and we automatically think of the fragile nature of this. And like in this image that you're showing right now, we can see the fragility of that
yes.
paper there, but then you have the like exact opposite where it's like a rock and you could throw it at somebody,
So what I'll
not that you
say
should do that, but.
is in its wet state, yeah, it's you have to be very gentle. Like there's like this image of me, like it can tear and it is easier to tear. But what's so awesome about this material is that, and I guess also frustrating, is that there's only a certain level of control that you can have over it. So it's a high shrinkage fiber, meaning that it as it dries, it shrinks to whatever object it's on. So if there's not enough space, it'll crack and tear. So that's what those holes have come from. So as an artist, I working with material, there's like a level of trust and independence I allow the material to have, and I just live with it. I mean, and of course, if I troubleshoot enough, I can exert that control, but it allows me to not completely act, as a dictator over my work with this material. It's really like it's really like a collaborative effort, me and handmade paper, which I think is why I love it so much. It is a natural fiber. So it has it's affected by humidity. It's affected by, if I let it dry on its own versus in front of a fan, that affects the way that the piece can look. Um, and there
You
is something,
recommend, oh,
sorry,
sorry.
and there's
I was gonna
something,
say,
yeah, go ahead, you go ahead.
sorry, I was just
Yeah.
asking, like in someone's home, do you recommend that they actually protect your work? Like, would they want to put it behind glass, or is it fine to like hang it as is?
Once now they're fine and dried. I mean, I feel like with any artwork, you want it like direct sunlight eventually, but this is all archival material. You would treat it the way you would, I think any piece of paper. You don't want to like hang it too close to like a hot radiator or something, or too close to the window, but I think it would stand the test of time. If,
Because we have some collectors
um,
in the audience here, you know.
yeah. Yeah, it doesn't really have um anything special than you would any other like printed artwork. All the fibers are archival, so it should last if treated pretty well, hundreds of years.
I see we have another question from the audience. They're also very drawn to the gold against the velvet and use that in their own studio. It says, really resonates with Brooklyn and Black City culture, along with your pieces pulling from your interest in Catholicism. Could you talk more about the evolution of material slash culture and spirituality?
Yeah, I love ritual and um and I love religion, but I'm just so I mean I double majored in art and religion undergrad. I find it to be one of humankind's greatest creative expression in the ways that we express belief and faith, aside all the issues that people use religion for. Um, so I'm sorry, what was the question again? What's
Kind of like
how am I
how did it
elevating?
evolve in your work? I think is the
Yeah.
overall, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that when I view these pieces, they're, not as I'm not considering it in the same way as like the Patois Relics series as directly spiritual, but I do see them. It's just something I'm constantly having in the back of my mind. Like I'm starting to like look at these pieces as like small sacred objects as well. Um, and I also look a lot at how like I'm really influenced, with these disparate elements putting together. I'm thinking about how people in different cultures, specifically me as the Afro-Caribbean woman, like altars are put together of like disparate materials that are everyday and mundane are set upon a shelf or a placard or something to signify its importance. So sometimes I look at these as like little expressions of like altar spaces,
I
you know?
definitely see there's a connection to like altars. And to me, I loved when he talked about these as almost like musical notes because there is that aspect of a symbolism in them, from the knockers to the forms that you've chosen. There's an iconography, if you will, that you're like a language you're creating that's your own, which is really interesting to see those connections develop.
And when I'm thinking about altar spaces, um, from like personal home altar spaces, people's homes, like my own, they might have the same objects, right? But they're all a little different, to, you know, irreverent. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's always there. Like religion and spiritual practices, it's mainly like at the core of my interests. And it's great. So, um reading the Zora Neale Hurston essay about the characters of Negro expression and ornament. And I think now widely or more like her practice. I just went to a Zora Neale Hurston symposium a few weeks ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, Zora Neale Hurston herself was this some scholars refer to her as a spiritist, because she spent so much of her time. She was, we understand the Harlem Renaissance icon and figure, but she spent so much time as an anthropologist studying Black spiritual practices from the South and the Caribbean. And it's has fed into her work and like her understanding of Black subjectivity and herself as a Black female. So yeah, so I'm thinking about like all these things and how that her research in Jamaica and Haiti and New Orleans and her home state in Florida and these Black folk tales and spiritual beliefs have fed into her writing practice. That, now some scholars and anthropologists are considering her um, an anthropologist in her own right.
Yeah. Is there anything that you're researching currently for future work in terms of spiritual connections or material? Yeah.
I am doing some research on objects that are, so I learned there's like archives of Black spiritual objects at I want to say Emory University, but I'm forgetting. You can like check out like crystal balls and
Oh,
like,
really?
and then there's, yeah, and fun research around it. And there is another book someone recommended to me that I just read the intro, but it's about these satchels that are either made of paper or um, uh, fabric that were commonly found among enslaved people in the Caribbean and Portugal. And there's like an archive of these things and what they
Oh, wow.
held in them. So that's like when I'm reading and researching.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I can't wait to see what you do with all of that. I know that we probably want to tie up soon here. I do see there was at least one more question. I think Janie had to leave, so I can't follow up, but she was saying how she loved the compression of the surfaces, and asked if there was a reason behind that.
Impression of the surfaces.
I think
And
she's
that
talking
should,
about the density, there's
uh-huh.
not negative space in them, or I'm assuming this is because I think she is not
Mhm.
here to follow up, but that, yeah, they're very compact.
Yeah, again, I see them as like brushstrokes, and yeah, it's just what the composition needs. It
Perhaps,
needs all of that. It needs all of that ornament in there. I
yeah,
think
it
that
that
did.
they're so incredibly beautiful. I can't wait to see them in person myself. Um, Possibly the compression she's talking, the compression that I see in them, and I don't know, she might have been referring to something else, but the compression of making these the molds and seeing the different uh, designs sort of pressed into the media of paper pulp has like in its essence a compressed factor into it, and then when you start to think about the idea of something being compressed or smushed or beaten down, it has all these connotations. I don't know if the we can't control all the reads we have of our work, but it's very deep to me.
And if the compression, I mean, there's reasons just materially why they have to be so compressed, but it is to get that detail. If you get close, you can see it in person. You can see like every like stitching of, of the lace and the grooves of the earrings, and the way that it holds a different paint and a different pigment. It's really exciting.
Do we have any more questions from the audience that you would like to add in the chat, or if there's anybody that wants to speak up, I can let you speak your own question if you'd like, if your preference is that. Not really sure how to do that effectively immediately, but
They can just unmute themselves and jump in.
okay. So do we have
Ah,
any more questions from the group?
before someone says anything, Yinka Shonobare, that's the artist I was thinking about with the criminal orientation essay. Get the Cadillac. It's a really great read and a beautiful show
I'll
that
have
focuses
just
on ornament.
for a general for the group, if you want to give advice to any artists that are here today or maybe watching this later that might want to get
Oh.
started in paper making, what's your
Oh man. I wish everyone in the whole wide world has a chance to make paper at some point in their life.
Mm.
It's just the best. If you're in New York, you can try doing an A in the classes. But really, it's actually, actually, I think if you Google my name, I did a DIY paper making tutorial. It was like a COVID era thing. How to make paper at home with egg cartons and a blender and a a stretcher bar. And once you start doing it, like the possibilities are truly endless. Like sculpture to painting, like the paint you see here is something called pulp paint, um, which is just finely blended paper pulp that's pigmented. Like um, get a beater. I'm looking to buy a beater. um, and stick it somewhere. Bigger materials, but just start. It's just so low toxic. You can do it at home. It's great for young humans. Just do it. Get some books and make paper. I think everyone should do it. And there are a few places around the country that you can take classes to.
Every time I hear you talk about paper, I get so inspired to
You have
work
to
with
do it. It's just the best.
paper.
And I wish that more places offered it, even universities. I worked at Cooper Union for a while, and that's the best paper making studio scene in a university,
Yeah.
like an art university. So I'm a huge advocate for anyone doing paper
Yeah.
making.
Well, thank you so much. This has just been incredible to learn such a deeper level of your background and thought process and technical processes and everything. I hope everyone's had a great time. If I missed a question, I apologize. I tried to get to all the questions in the chat. Do you have anything else to wrap up, Anna?
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and you, Christina, for being involved in this conversation, and Jasmine, the work. What can I say? It's amazing. It's gorgeous. It's when you see it digitally, it just makes you want to see it in person, and that's where we want to see work is in person. And so can't wait to see where we can see you next. And everybody, all of Jazmine's information is on our Blackball Projects viewing room, so you can find out her Instagram information, follow her, look at her personal website, learn more on the viewing room. And again, I just want to thank all of you for for coming. And yeah, we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for everybody for joining tonight, and thanks
Yeah,
again to Black Ball Projects.
thank you
Bye.
all.